As we look forward to the anniversary celebrations of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, which is today. Now joining us on this show to discuss the highlights of the anniversary is Nigeria's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tuggar. Minister Tuggar, thank you for joining us and welcome to the morning show.
Morning, Dr. Ruben. Good to hear your voice.
Thank you for joining us. Well, quickly, let's just start with you talking about the achievements of ECOWAS at 50 and the challenges going forward, and also the role of Nigeria in ECOWAS and what the priorities should be, because Nigeria is always the Father Christmas, either in ECOWAS or in the African Union. Those three issues, quickly and as briefly as possible.
Okay. Well, today is a joyous day, 50 days of ECOWAS. To appreciate the achievements, it's important to look at what existed before ECOWAS and the attempts at unity and a common market that were attempted in the past. For instance, you had the West African Customs Union, UDAO, which was created by Francophone countries, which failed back then. Because one of the problems we encountered or that existed in the region also was the difference between Francophone, Anglophone, and Lusophone. So to bring all of these parties together, all of these countries, in spite of the differences in language, in colonial experience, to create what is today ECOWAS. Today we have the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme that is functioning on a very novel, very unique funding mechanism, because you mentioned Nigeria as a Father Christmas. Well, Nigeria is the largest. Nigeria also benefits immensely from ECOWAS with Nigerian businesses, manufacturers that register their goods through that ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme. So we have access, because it's not just about size, it's also about scale. When you want to scale up to bring your cost of production down, it helps that you are functioning, you're part of a larger geographical area, larger demographic area. We have SIGMAT, which is the digitization of the tracking system for customs, so that they can track containers, goods, services moving across the region. We've got the Abidjan-Lagos corridor that seeks to provide a free-flowing trade and transport corridor from Abidjan all the way to Lagos. Ditto, the Abidjan-Dakar corridor. So these are very important trade and transport corridors. And of course, the whole idea is to attain legal and regulatory convergence in the area, so that we can also fit in with other regional economic communities and create the African Continental Free Trade Area, the largest market in the world. Today, the European Union is perhaps the largest market. The African Continental Free Trade Area would overtake the EU. And then you have to look at also the contributions of the littoral states, the West African littoral states, to the creation of the modern world, the wealth that was created, which unfortunately we were not part of, or we did not partake. We were shortchanged at that time. Now there is another wave of boom in the Atlantic world, and we stand ready to benefit from it. We will benefit if we are united under the umbrella of ECOWAS and such frameworks. In a nutshell, I think.
Okay, I love the message of unity that you're putting forward. The question that many people would love to hear the response to is, what is ECOWAS without the trio of Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger? What does that look like at 50?
You actually said it. You've answered the question. You said trio, and then you have 12 states. ECOWAS was 15 states. Now it is 12, but it is the literal states that I was mentioning on the Atlantic that as I said, were key to the creation of the modern world, because the trade, that's why it's called parts of West Africa are referred to as the Gold Coast, because we were exchanging goods and even people that hold, because of the slave trade, that hold long-term value for goods that had a very short-term value in terms of usage. So metal basins and this the so-called Dutch print, because they were exchanging slaves and gold for textiles, for instance. That created that boom. That trade was along that West African coast. And this is what is going to happen. And we are not closing the door on the three countries, as we keep repeating. They are more than welcome. Of course, ECOWAS kept making overtures, trying to get them to remain. Unfortunately, they've made their minds up. I don't know how old you are. You look much younger than Ruben and I, but Ruben and I grew up here in Nigeria under successive military regimes, coups, counter-coups. So people like us that didn't get to vote until we were in our 30s understand and appreciate the democratic systems that the ECOWAS countries signed onto in the first place. And unfortunately, because of the unconstitutional changes of government, some of them decided to leave.
Okay, Minister Tuggar, two things. The incursion Russia is making in this area, and especially with those AES states and the relationship they're having, number one. Number two, the eco-currency and the politics of economics of France with the French-speaking area and the French-speaking bloc. Can you speak to us about those two things?
With the Russian involvement and their ambitions of creating an Africa core, it's something of great concern to all the countries, because it will further destabilize the region. It would further destabilize Africa, because you can see that their ambitions with this Africa core and the involvement of Russia and private military companies, if you will, in the Central African Republic, and now with this involvement in Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, you can see that it would create an arc more or less around Nigeria. So the only missing link now in the puzzle is Chad. So we're quite concerned about that, which is why we continue to engage the Russians. Other countries are also very much concerned about that. But the fact remains that we have to collaborate, we have to work together with all of these countries to bring about peace, to fight terrorism in the region. Russia should be aware of what transpired in Dien Bien Phu in Vietnam. You will remember when the Americans went out, the French came in, and they both ended up losing disastrously and pulling out. So now we have a situation where there was G5 Sahel, there was Operation Barkhane in the Sahel. Nigeria was not invited to it, it was not a party to it. And clearly the French lost out. The European Union lost out with its EU Sahel strategy. They pulled out. And now the Russians are gradually, getting involved. So they have to be careful. They have to realize that for these sort of peacekeeping operations or measures to be effective, you have to involve countries like Nigeria. We led ECOMOG, and we succeeded in peace building where other countries have not succeeded in other parts of the world. Sierra Leone, Liberia, they are clear examples of what Nigeria can achieve. I can't even remember the second part of your question. Sorry, you have to. I got so carried away in answering the first part.
Yeah, the second part of my question was French politics as regards eco-currency.
Exactly.
You know,
yes.
and all of that. And let me top it up with you by saying, does ECOWAS have a position on the Gaza war? You know, so that I'm going to top it up with you. But French, you know, financial politics, the eco, and, you know, those countries that spend France. And does the ECOWAS have a position on Gaza war?
Yeah. Clearly, there was a revolt against the continuing involvement of France in influencing or even controlling the common currency that the former French colonies had in the region. At some point, you remember that, in fact, their reserves, I think, were domiciled in Paris. And due to complaints and agitations, even among the EU countries, some said this is tied to the upsurge in irregular migration. They criticized France for it. And after that, the home of the foreign reserves was moved from Paris to Dakar. So these agitations existed even before the unconstitutional changes of government in the former French colonies that are today the AES countries. So there's that move there, and that is why also the creation of an equal currency is most germane. It would further unite us, unite Anglophone, Francophone, Lusophone countries in the region. And we continue to work at that. We have to, first and foremost, reach convergence. And that's why in opening, I talked about legal and regulatory convergence, which is very important. There's so many things that are happening in terms of this convergence to do with livestock, to do with water systems, West Africa power pool that ECOWAS has achieved, and milestones. And unless you attain that, having a common currency would not be possible. And all the countries have to reach a certain benchmark before you have a common currency. With Gaza, of course, we stand with the Gazans. The position is clear. We condemn the continuing siege that is going on in Gaza against the people of Palestine. ECOWAS has been unequivocally clear that it is for the two-state solution, and it continues to condemn the actions of the State of Israel.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Minister. We do know that you were in London earlier this year. You spoke at Chatham House. I listened to the entirety of your remarks and your question and answer session. And a lot of what you said talked about how important it is for you to position Nigeria well within this developing international global order. So I would like to ask you what specifically your foreign policy objectives are when we're looking at different international institutions, the African Union, the United Nations, perhaps even Nigeria getting a seat on the United Nations Security Council. It just would be great to hear specifically what your foreign policy goals are for Nigeria in this developing global order.
So foreign policy objectives will remain the same because they're enshrined in the Constitution. It is our region, our continent, Africa, to continue to work with them, because those who I would refer to, I guess, as the founding fathers of Nigeria, because this has been consistent in Nigeria's constitutions, realize that we need scale and we need the continent. Because if today we're even 220 million and we're going to be 400 million, we need to engage our continent, we need to engage other markets within that region. And the only way we can do that is if we get along with our neighbors and those that we share this continent with. So it's Africa, it's of course having peaceful relations with other countries. It is also recognizing and abiding by our commitments, our the agreements we enter into, the treaties, and so on and so forth. So there are 5 of them, they still remain the same. But in terms of the foreign policy agenda of the Tinubu administration, from the get-go, it was clear. It is strategic autonomy on the pillars of democracy, development, demography, and diaspora, which allows us to engage with all these countries that we want to live with in peaceful coexistence. But understanding that first and foremost, we clarify, we identify, and we put forward our national interests.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Yusuf Tuggar, Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on